Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Push to Talk podcast, a show centered around the latest and greatest in FPS, from extraction shooters to battle royale, survival, and everything in between, usually leaning more towards the tactical, realistic side of things.
Yes, sir. Today's episode is awesome.
Yeah.
In this episode, we interviewed Dean Hall. If you have not heard of him, he is the originator of DayZ, perhaps the survival genre as a whole. And, you know, some people could even say played a big part in battle royales too. It was awesome to talk to him. In this interview, you guys are going to get an unfiltered look at the behind the scenes of the industry. We talked development of games. We talked about some of his service in the military, some of the survival stuff he did that inspired DayZ. We got some of that backstory. It was just a really awesome episode, as well as everything they got going on at the studio now with Icarus, Kitten Space Agency, the new platform to put games out with AWU, and just a wide gamut of stuff, completely unfiltered. He was awesome enough to let us ask anything, and that's what we did. And I think towards the end of the episode, we tried to tease out, you know, is there going to be like a DayZ 2 or something like that? And I think the answer will surprise you guys. I don't think he's done. I don't think he's done with PV survival shooters. So maybe some intel about what's coming next from Dean Hall and RocketWorks. I don't know, a little bit. Talked about it.
Super cool. Guys, if you are enjoying the shows, make sure if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, leave us a 5-star review. It helps get the podcast out there. And if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're watching this on Spotify video, make sure you guys leave a like. Just leave a like and rate it up as high as you possibly can,
it's
wherever
free.
It is. It's free. It's
Just
free,
do it.
and it helps the show out more than you guys could even imagine. So without further ado, this is the interview we did just the other day with Dean Hall.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Prox Chat part of the show. We have a very special guest for you guys today. Dean Hall is joining us. He's the CEO of RocketWorks. You guys probably also know some of his past projects, which we will get into as well. But yeah, Dean, how are you doing?
I'm doing very good. Thanks for having me.
Hell
Yeah, is there anything I missed? I know, dude, the DayZ thing is crazy. I'm a little starstruck, but we'll get through it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You guys might know him from there. You guys also currently working on the Kitten Space is
Kitten
going on
Space
too.
Agency.
Yeah. I was checking out some of that stuff, and you guys have a wide range of IPs that's going on and stuff that you've worked on in the past. And I'm excited to get into it all, man. It's gonna be cool.
So
Awesome.
I'm going to take the first question here, if you don't mind, Dean, because we haven't talked in, well, it's 4.5, 5 years now, kind of leading into the intro of Icarus. I think I was one of the first people to like showcase the game on YouTube at the time. It was awesome. You're obviously working on a new IP now. We're going to get into that in a little bit. I just kind of want to get caught up. How has the last 4 to 5 years been for you guys at RocketWorks? What's been going on?
A lot.
Yeah.
I look a lot older. I have a lot more gray hair.
Love that.
I think there's a gray hair, just a loose one, just hanging down here, sadly. So yeah, Icarus was really tough as a project. It was kind of our first big project that didn't get cancelled.
Yeah.
So, you know, we did the beta weekends, which I think I talked to you just before we started the beta weekends.
Yep.
And they were a really good idea, but it was about halfway through the beta weekend, we realized there was a whole bunch of mistakes we'd made, just in terms of what we were doing and some elements of the game. So then that was when I said to the team, I'm like, we're going to have to update the game every week. You know, we're going to have to update the game every week. And also, we had built the central server architecture, which some people liked because it meant that if your friend was offline, the game would just get hosted. But it was costing us about $150,000 a month. And it was basically unnecessary. And we were like, if we run out of money, this game's going to go down. So then we ripped that out and replaced it with dedicated servers. So there was a lot of, so we've had to update the game every week without fail since launch. But I think that was what kept us alive, really.
Yeah. Man, that number blows my mind. First of all, that's like damn near our development budget working on a small shooter like that. That shit is scary. That's actually one of the questions, because I just saw you shared an article on Twitter about the Steam winter sale, selling what was it, almost 1 million new units of the game during that sale. So obviously things have been going pretty good. The interest is still seemingly keeping up. You guys are updating it every week. You said it was a hard project. Can you kind of go into that a little bit more? In our last interview, we talked about some of the development hardships, and I kind of want to talk about that stuff a little bit and be more open about what actually goes into making, especially multiplayer games like this. So love for you to expand on that.
I mean, what I think people don't realize, I don't think anyone is ready to be CEO of a company or run a team, even though, you know, I'd been in the military and I had been in charge of stuff. There's just so much new stuff that comes in. So when I left DayZ and Bohemia owned DayZ, so you know that was sort of what it was. So then it's kind of like running a studio. You just sort of stumble into all these mistakes. And with Icarus, it was either I sell more shares to get more money to keep it going, or we kind of need to get a game out in a certain period of time. We also had agreed a Steam takeover. For Icarus got a Steam takeover, which now it's like impossible for indie games to basically get Steam takeovers, really, until they've made a lot of money.
Yep.
So we were kind of up against this hard line where either the studio was going to go under or we get it out. And I think in that circumstance, it's really easy sometimes to lose sight of the things you need to look at. One of the biggest things that killed us at launch was not performance, it was not server stuff, it was localization. Our localization was broken at launch.
Yep.
And it's funny because now the Steam reviews get sorted by language, but they didn't back then. And what happened was, if you changed the language box when Icarus launched, it didn't change the language. We'd done all the localization, it all worked. There was just a simple bug with that. And that meant that we just got absolutely decimated in reviews from a lot of territories, very reasonably as well, because the game says, hey, all these languages, and then it didn't work.
Yep.
So there's just lots of little things that happen like that. I think for me, it was growing into the role of being the CEO of a game company and, you know, dealing with large groups of people and maybe projects that I haven't got a lot of technical knowledge on. I didn't work technically on Icarus, which was the first for me. I normally was always deep in the code of stuff. So there was just a lot there, and there was a lot to deal with. And we needed to find a strategy. Originally, we wanted to make it as a free-to-play game, but we couldn't get a publisher. And so then we were like, okay, we're going to make this a paid game. So then it was figuring out what's a strategy that's going to work. And for us, it was a sort of Paradox-style strategy of doing big free updates and trying to put cosmetic DLC alongside it. And then we came up with a way of doing expansion. So instead of doing a sequel to the game, we'd release these big, chunky, like just a whole other thing. That worked out really well for us. That pretty much saved the company. About half of our revenue in dollar terms comes from DLC.
Wow.
Nice. I kind of wanted to touch on that because you talked about some of the stuff that was like new to you as being the head of a studio. Was that always your goal in game dev to be a studio head, or is that something that came with like during your time at DayZ and Bohemia?
It was always, I always wanted to run my own game studio. When I was at high school, oh man, you can't talk about it without cringing, but I'd give games to my friends and I'd label them all as like Dean Hall Systems or something. That's what I called my game company. When I'm not very inspired with naming stuff. But I think I always did, but I think I definitely didn't really understand what was involved with that, I suppose. Yeah.
Nice. That's cool that, yeah, your arc of from military to DayZ modding to, you know, working with an actual IP with Bohemia to where you are now. It's a cool story, and we'll touch on a lot of those aspects of it. But to keep up with, we're diving right into Icarus at the top.
Yeah.
And you touched on how you wanted to monetize that going forward, and stuff. So what are some of the things you considered versus, because I see that I was looking through everything on Steam. It seems kind of like you have what I would kind of call like maybe a premium model with the expansions where those cost, and then you have some free ones as well. What did you kind of weigh as a studio head going that route versus, you know, where we see a lot of live service games. Some of them struggle. We see a lot of live service games that like all the playable content is free and then you just make a ton of skins. Like, was that something you considered, or what went into that decision?
Well, I mean, the key thing to remember is so Icarus launched deep into mixed, right? And I remember I was feeling pretty rough about it because I think there's a good game there, and certainly you could feel it that there was a good game there. And honestly, reviews, and I know Big Fry, you've touched on this. Reviews are often a measure of players' expectation, not necessarily raw quality. So in that sense, sometimes it hurts even more because that means a whole bunch of people said, hey, I really want to check out Dean Hall's game and the team's game. And then they play it and they're like, well, I didn't really like it. And so that hurt. But that was when I knew, okay, the only way that we're going to get back from there is to do weekly updates. And I actually talked about this on a podcast with Arrowhead's CEO, Shams. He's actually ex-Paradox, and I love talking to him. He's a fantastic, super interesting guy.
Awesome.
And we talked about that, earning the right to monetize. So I would say we sort of fell into it all accidentally. We did, no paid DLC for a long time. The first big DLC we did was completely free, which was called Sticks, which was actually a sorry. It was like a we're sorry, and which is now actually paid, but actually makes quite a bit of money. So a lot of it was sort of accidental, but it was that sort of good old fashioned game dev. It was just we needed to update it every week. We needed to correct some big mistakes. So actually, I think Big Fry in your video, I should go back and check, but I think you'd highlighted either in the video we did a long time ago or offline a concern around this whole mission-based model. Because originally Icarus was session-based. You'd go in, you'd do something, you'd get out. And we actually had to not abandon it, but we became very apparent that a lot of people wanted the more traditional experience. And that required a lot of work. And we ended up calling it operations. So the game's kind of this Frankenstein's monster of that and missions. It's funny because we've started to see a resurgence.
I was about to say that. Yep.
Who were like, oh, I actually prefer the missions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh,
well, when you talk about that session base of dropping in, doing your thing, and then getting out, I mean, extraction genre is blowing up, right? So like, yeah, it's funny how things come full circle.
We didn't get it right, though. Like to be real, we had this whole other meta game planned that was in orbit, and I think with that we might have even still missed it. I still think like session-based survival is a really cool way to go, but I think maybe I misunderstood all of the elements and how difficult it was to get them all together. So yeah, that's a very long-winded way of saying we didn't kind of go into it. And in fact, I think we went into it saying there's no way we're going to be a live service game. There's, and we need to do everything we can just to keep the game going. And it was only really over time we'd sort of try something and it would work and people would like it. So we'd be like, oh, maybe we should do more of that. And yeah, just really intensely looking at what was happening. We rely on Discord very heavily to try and talk with people, to talk with content creators. And they're not always good talks as well. Sometimes they're, difficult conversations. Players might say, we really want this thing. And we're like, well, we really can't do that. A whole bunch of decisions, we might agree with it, but a whole bunch of decisions technically early on don't follow through.
Yeah. Don't call it tech debt, but it's an impossibility. Seeing as like, I just kind of went through the process of like launching our own title. Right. And I wanted to kind of jump back to, you said you kind of went in, you ended up deep in the mixed when it comes to the review scores. Did that catch you by surprise? And then leading off of that, like you said, you guys kind of went in and then you were like, hey, we're going to work it, do weekly updates. What kind of like, what went into the conversations with the team, days after launch when you get into the shit? What does that look like for a studio your size?
It's really tough. And I'm pretty straight up and down. So over time, I've had to learn how to sort of soften how I'll talk about things. I'm not in the military anymore.
Yeah.
But I think I just sort of leveled with the team. I'd been there. Stationeers, our other little game, was deep in the mix. It's like very positive. Sometimes we've even been an overwhelmingly positive, but it's easy to forget. Like we launched into mixed with that, and it hurts. I don't think a lot of gamers realize. I remember you released a video after Transients came out, and you just kind of owned it.
Yeah.
But I think people don't realize that's very difficult to do. Making a game such a personal thing, and I think watching your videos come out, I saw a lot of the same things as me. Sometimes people can mistake passion for arrogance and stuff, and I think it can come off like that with me sometimes. But I think, releasing a game is very personal. So for me, I knew what was involved. I knew we've been down the same route with DayZ standalone as well. So I was like, look, we have to be so consistent. It's freaky. Like that was, and it was hard. The team, there was a lot of pushback. We can't do it. And their first few updates, they tried to put so much in, and I was like, look, we're going to have to just do it in small chunks and just earn that trust. Mm-hmm. Some weeks we'll do something that's some new content will come out, but some weeks will be performance. And it was really hard, and it was extremely hard for the team, but I knew we were going to go bankrupt. Like there was no question. There was no way we were going to get the money coming in if we didn't turn it around.
It's inspiring, honestly, just to, because a lot, I'm in the business of covering people who would have just said, well, fuck it, it's done. Right. So the fact that you guys just kind of hunkered down and did it, it's super cool to see.
I mean, I wanted, like, there's a lot of times you want to do that, right? There's a lot of times that sort of fantasize. I'm sure being a content creator, it's the same thing. So, you'll do something and then a YouTuber or someone will change the algorithm and you just feel like flipping the table.
Oh my God.
So it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same for me. There's definitely times you're like, why am I doing this? I'm not making any money out of it. Like, but I think for me, what else would I do? Like, I just I live and breathe making video games. It's just in my blood. It's just what I do. So I'm like, I'm gonna have to figure this out. And I'm really lucky. I work with just really good people. Like the team, just over time. There's some people that's been with us now for 10 years.
Wow.
And that I think makes it a lot easier to just not flip the table and sit down and say, okay, we're going to have to figure this out.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Nice. You've mentioned your military service just a little bit. So I would imagine, as someone who I never served, but I would imagine that to be a pretty transformative period of your life. So I was wondering if you could maybe give people just like a brief rundown of like your career and some of the stuff that you did, because I find that stuff really interesting. And then what kind of aspects and lessons did you take from that in leading a game studio? What did you learn that helps you, kind of be the leader for your team?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt if I hadn't have been in the military when I was younger, there's not a bone in my body that doubts that I wouldn't, there's no way I'd be where I am today, for sure. So I came from, we were pretty, we weren't a wealthy family. We were a poor family in the South Island of New Zealand. So, a town of like 12,000 people, and it was not a wealthy town. Actually, it is kind of wealthy now. Dairy farming kicked off, but when I was a kid, it was not. And at my high school, which is like 600 students, 1/3 of the what we'd call senior year would apply. Sorry, 2/3 would apply for either government jobs or the military. That was how you got out of my town. You joined the military. And I really wanted to join the Air Force. I think I'd watched too much Top Gun. So I was a middle child. There was no way our family could afford to send all of us to college. So my brother was really smart. So he was going to university. And actually the military had just brought in this new program, a little bit like your ROTC, I think, where they're like, hey, we'll pay for you to go to college, and in return you owe us some years. And it was them who suggested to me, do you want to go to university? We'll pay. And I was like, okay, you guys know I'm not that smart, right? And that was how I got kicked off. And I was in the Air Force for about 5 years, but it wasn't quite as exciting as I wanted. The New Zealand Air Force, a little boring. So I actually got out, and I actually found it hard to get a job because everybody was like, why did you leave the military? It was a good job, because I was an officer, I was a commissioned officer. And I got a job on a construction project, and I learned heaps about project management, like so much. It was actually building the 4 prisons in New Zealand at once. It was an
Oh, wow.
insanely complex project, but I got to learn heaps. And then I ended up back in the military as a civilian for a little bit. And then I ended up re-enlisting in the army as a signals officer. And I think second time around, I was a bit older and I just approached things better. And that was going super well. I was doing really well, but I had an injury, and which is where I got the idea to make DayZ, actually, while I had the injury. And I don't know, I don't want to throw shade at doctors and stuff, but army doctors have always peed me off. So they medically downgraded me, which I really didn't like, because I actually set a battalion record for the operational fitness test. And I'm like, how can you have me medically downgraded when I set a record for it? And so I got really peed off and emotionally said, oh, I'm going to quit then. And they were like, please don't quit. We'll give you a leave of absence. And my boss was like, my CO was like, if you go away for a year, the doctors will be like, whatever, and be fine. There'll be a new doctor in. And it was during that year I said, well, I'll go work at Bohemia on Arma 3. And then DayZ kicked off and that whole life just ended. But look, it was super transformative. I don't want to sound like I'm a shill for the armed forces, but I think if there's anyone who watches any of my stuff who goes, oh, I think there might be a little bit of Dean rocking around in me, it just gave me a structure. I still kind of run things a bit like a platoon commander. I have to soften the edges a little bit. Super transformative for me. Absolutely. And I really can't speak about it enough. I miss it, but I think, what is it? I miss the monkeys, not the circus.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Definitely miss my friends. I catch up with some of them. They're all doing important jobs now, or dead, one or the other. But yeah, I definitely miss my friends. And I think that's what makes me miss serving a lot, is probably them.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your service. I've obviously, I don't think I'm fit enough to even fucking walk into a recruiting office, but I appreciate your service.
Hey, I'll tell you what, anyone though, especially the drill sergeants will kick you into shape in no time.
No shit.
That'd be
all right.
brutal.
Yeah, dude. I don't know, man. I see some of those videos, dude. I don't even think I could stomach it, to be honest, but anybody who does,
You
man,
got a lot of fire in you, Big Fry.
I
You'd
do.
be surprised that fire comes out.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I'm okay with physical stuff if I go my own pace. Like I like to archery hunt, and I'll put on my packs and my bow, and I'll go hiking, and I can do hills and stuff. But I like to take breaks when I need breaks, and I don't think that the drill sergeant would be on my schedule. So
yeah,
that's where we would probably have a hard time.
So it's funny because my older brother, he's a massive hunter, spearfisher. He's a scientist, and it's funny because I'm a mountaineer. So when we were kids, my dad would take us, and my dad just wanted to go hiking, right? He just wanted to go into the outdoors and just cook a fire, start a fire and just chill out. And my brother's wanting to go up some random ridge somewhere that no one would ever go to because he saw a deer. And I'm like just looking for the biggest, nastiest mountain to climb. I feel bad for my dad. But a lot of that rubbed off on me in the kind of games. Like I'm fascinated with survival still. And I just think those emotions are really interesting. And it is interesting to me to contrast the mindset of a hunter with the mindset of a soldier, with the mindset of a mountaineer. I don't know. Very interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good jumping point, because my next question kind of goes into your guys' as RocketWorks, your IPs, vast amounts of different types of games that you guys are working on now. How do we then get to the most recent game that you guys are currently working on, which is Kitten Space Agency? Now, this is Kerbal Space Program, spiritual successor. This is out of my element, but I watched your video, I think it was about 10 months ago, where you just threw on a camera and you were just kind of going through what the game is. Can you give a rundown of what this actually is? How did you go from Icarus to Stationeers to this? And just kind of let people know what you guys got cooking.
Yeah, so look, I think we almost have to go back further.
Sure.
With DayZ, it was kind of like, I remember this. We were making the standalone, and I think people don't realize how crazy it was. One day, I'm a soldier, right? And I'm on a year leave of absence in I'm allowed to swear, right?
Of
That's
course,
I am.
yeah.
Fucking Czech Republic,
Yeah.
right? I don't even speak Czech. I'm literally in Europe. You could drill a hole, and I'm little white boy from the south, right? In New Zealand. Like I was like, I don't need to learn languages. I'm never gonna be anywhere. And it was crazy. And then one day, I think my first payment was like $5 million. So I went from, I remember my mum calling me like, hey, I had a Toyota Celica, right? I love that car.
Yeah.
Don't care what anyone says, like a 98 or something. And I needed my mum to sell it because that's how strapped I was for cash. And my mum calls me and says, I managed, because I put this really cool stereo in it, really awesome. Some guy got a great deal. And my mum's like, oh, I managed to find this guy and sold the car for like, I don't know, $2,000 or something. And I'm like, well, I sort of hadn't updated my mum. I'm like, oh, actually, I think I don't really need that anymore. So it was incredibly destabilizing. I'm not looking for sympathy, but it's just, there's a lot of stuff to happen to you. So with DayZ, I realized I needed to grow heaps. I needed to, if I wanted to run a studio, there was a heap of stuff I was going to have to learn. But also, I didn't want to tackle another, particularly PvP game, until I dealt with until I had better tools to do it, until I had the technology to deal with antisocial behavior, hacking, and approaches. So there was a whole bunch of stuff I learned. Then the more I looked into it, the more I was like, over the years, I was like, okay, well, now we need to do this. Well, now we need to do that. And it was just this endless procession of, well, actually, I think we need to look at this. Like I don't know if you've played Icarus recently. If you run around, there's still stutters. It drives me crazy. It drives me just bonkers. So we're like, our kind of three pillars are performance, stability, and quality. Like that's not what customers think about me necessarily, but it's what we want them to.
Right.
So, Hidden Space Agency, we'd originally bid to make KSP2. We got into the top 3 and we lost out. And I remember Take-Two were being, I think one of the guys on the call got it, because I did a game design document which ended up getting leaked. Or sorry, a pitch for it that got leaked, and I included no art. It was just a technical and design breakdown.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the guys was like, "I get it. This is awesome." And the other two guys were like, "What is going on here? What? You're the only people who submitted a suggestion that didn't contain any art." So with this, we actually built it from the ground up ourselves with our own framework, which we call Brutal. So instead of using Unreal or Unity, we did it like that. And also, I'm sure there's a lot of people watching who will be like, "Oh, well, Icarus sucks because it has all this DLC." And I'd say, I agree. I don't like that. I think we've done the softest version of DLC you can, with a vast majority of it. There's about 250 New Zealand dollars worth, so like 150, 200 US dollars worth of DLC. But most of it is cosmetic, but not all of it. There's 3 bigger expansions. Mm-hmm. And so with Kitten Space Agency, the game's actually completely free, and we're just doing a contribution model. Now, it's only raised like $130,000 so far. We've probably already spent $2 million. But I think for me, that idea, for those who like a game like KSP, I just think money was going to ruin it. So I know it might seem a little random, but to me, it's a step on the way. I'm definitely not done with PvP, and I'm certainly not done with PvE. And I'd really like to make another game, maybe with zombies, but definitely another PvP shooter. But I don't want to do it until I got better, until the studio got better, until we had all the technology to deliver it.
So when you guys, just to springboard out that, when you guys originally pitched, was there somebody at the team that was just like super passionate and they want, like, how did you get there? Like, what was, it was all you, huh?
I love KSP.
Okay,
yeah, and
gotcha.
actually, I'd met the creator of KSP, Felipe, who's fantastic. You should talk to him sometime. He's amazing to talk to.
Yeah.
What was funny is I hadn't spoken to him in 10 years, and when the war notices, very similar to the Ashes of Creation situation, when that came out for KSP, we had actually several times rejected making a KSP-like game because we were like, even if we make a good game, there's no oxygen in the room for us to exist with this big IP. And then it was maybe 2 months after I'd been fiddling around with this new tech we made. I'd made a little prototype called Orbit just to check out our new tech. And that was when the war notice came out. And we kind of knew, okay, they can't talk about it for a month. Once those war notices happen, you're not supposed to say anything, which is another really crazy thing about the Ashes of Creation situation. And so we just started contacting all of the team and saying, hey, we're pretty interested in doing this thing. And so we picked up some of their great team members, and I hit up Felipe and said, dude, do you want to come check out New Zealand? So we put him on a plane, flew over, and actually Felipe's using our technology to do some of his next thing. I'll let him explain all what that is when the time comes. But he's super awesome, and I'm so glad to have reconnected with him. But yeah, so that's the longest-winded way of explaining. I was super into it. A lot of our team were.
That's awesome.
ASP, yeah.
Cool. And so you had mentioned about the crowdfunding or it raised about 100,000. I'd love for you to go into, because I don't think I've seen this before either, and I kind of need a little bit of explanation. Is it Awu? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
How did that come about? Is that something that you guys created as well? Like, where's the connection to RocketWorks there?
Yeah, so again, it's kind of like after DayZ, and I forgot to say the moment it happened. It was at Gamescom, just before we released the standalone. So that would have been like October, and we released the standalone in December.
Okay.
That was the first time actual customers had played the game. I remember demoing it at E3, which would have been June, and everybody was like, this is amazing. You know, I'd have people, like famous people, would come up to me and be like, wow, this is amazing. But I think it was because DayZ was just this amazing thing that was happening and everybody wanted to love it. But at Gamescom was the first time actual customers played the game. And I was like, man, we're fucked. Because they liked it, but they were like, this is pretty rough. And my contract actually expired in December. Like, that's what people don't realize as well. My contract expired. Technically, I had no contract after that. So I was like, man, I could be fucked too. So I guess what I'm saying is at that point, I made this commitment to myself. If I was going to make another PvP game, I wanted to really just do it right. And I wanted to be super honest with myself about the technology, about how we delivered stuff. And what that's led to is this sort of 10-year process of looking at things and going, it's not right. So, you know, Unreal just wasn't right. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but for what we were trying to do, we kept butting up against these problems that wouldn't normally be problems for a lot of games, but absolutely are. Why has no one made another DayZ? You know, why not? There's been billions of dollars probably now thrown at it.
Yep.
And the closest someone's probably got is Gary Newman with Rust. And if you look at anything Gary Newman does, he's extremely technically competent.
Yep.
And he just goes through all of the technical elements. The guy is just an absolute genius and very funny, I might add. So I guess Awu was kind of an extension of, I think there's no way to release a game like Kitten Space Agency as it is now on Steam, because Steam customers want more, and that's totally fine. Like, I think early access, I actually worked with Valve early on with early access, and I got pretty frustrated because I wanted a lot of changes. So, for example, one of the things that I've long wanted is the ability to pledge money towards a product, and have it held in trust, but not give it to the developer until a certain point. So that was one thing I really wanted with early access, where let's say you've got a game like Kitten Space Agency, you might say, look, that's a cool idea, but I've been burned a lot. So I want you to hold on to some of that money, and it only get released when the community agrees that it's okay. But that throws up a big problem because what if the community is crazy? So then the idea is you have like
Yep.
a customer board and you have a developer board. Again, a suggestion I made to Valve a long time ago. They should have a board that's staffed and paid customers and a board for developers to get feedback in, because Valve is just this massive black box that you just have to hope is doing the right thing. And look, the many times there's just typical Valve win and all that.
Yeah.
But what about the ones you don't know about? So I guess a long-winded way of saying I want to approach everything from first principles. And with Kitten Space Agency, it was like, I just don't know whether Steam is the right place for it. And that was what really sort of started that. Then we were like, okay, well, there's a whole bunch of features we want to do. Just simple stuff. Like every time we update our games all the time, and it's extremely frustrating that Steam doesn't check the version. Yep. So we built our own version system to check that. And we're like, well, this is crazy. So, yeah.
Wow. So if somebody wanted to back Kitten Space Agency right now, where do they go? How do they get involved?
Yeah, so they go to rwoo.com. I think the first thing I'd say is if you're not into Kerbal Space Program, you're probably not going to like it. But you can download it for free, and that's really kind of important to me, because I see that kind of game is quite almost not educational, but very inspirational. There's many people who have actually emailed me and Felipe to say, hey, I now work at NASA. I got inspired playing Kerbal Space Program, and we really wanted to pay that forward. And for anyone not familiar, the KSP2 ending is scarily similar to the Ashes of Creation situation. And I just think that something has to change in the industry. We've got to try new ways. Look, honestly, I would say probably I'm most likely to fail catastrophically some point in my career and lose all my money. But I think we have to try different stuff. I think that's what was really awesome about Transients with you. Like, I think there's a lot of content creators who talk a big talk about stuff, but you were really prepared to really put yourself out there. And I think there's just this huge personal toll that comes with it. So I'm sure, I know for me, I feel like something has to change. We have to try some different stuff.
Yeah.
We have to try different ways. We scraped through with Icarus. Even after the Winter Sailor, it's not like we're adding acres to the grounds or anything. I still haven't made not a single dollar out of Rocketworks. All of the money we make just gets spent making games. So, we were the fourth most sold in units game during the Steam Winter Sale. So it's a pretty terrifying landscape for what I'd call middle tier indies.
Yeah. Well, you reached out shortly after I released my video talking about some of the publisher conversations that we had. And I wanted to ask, this actually isn't part of our notes here. What was the reason for reaching out now? It's been 5 years. You watched a video. How did this come about? Or why did this come about?
That video super resonated with me. I think, I watch quite a lot of content creators' videos all the time, definitely including yourself. So it wasn't like, I think, but that video was like, I feel like I should really help, because I thought you were passing on a really good message as you sort of have been through it. Just the landscape that's faced with making games, and it's really easy and important to call out crappy games, to call out, what people would call slop or asset flips. But I think you and several other content creators have been really good about pointing out there's using assets in a game.
Yeah.
No problem with that. In fact, that's kind of important with what we want to get to the fun first.
Yeah.
And I think maybe because of your experience making Transients, that video, which I super encourage people to go watch, I think had a layer of insight that really wasn't there. Because people like me don't really make videos. We spent you spent like 30 minutes me trying to get this working before we did this. So it's not a perspective that was why I was like, I'd really like to sort of signal boost that or chat, because I just thought it was really good and really meaty and the kind of thing that we should be talking about. Because it's very easy as a game dev to be like, to just retreat And I've kind of found that, like, I don't really do a lot of social media and stuff now. And I think it was really good to me to see someone sharing a bit of that insight from it. And I wish more game devs did that too.
Yeah. I think the landscape is so incredibly hostile that if you're not already in this space, like there was no way I could have released that and then just hermited away. You can't, because this is literally my job. But I think it, like you said, I came out, there were problems with it. I own it, because I had no other option to. I'm not going to sit here and try to cope my way through it. People are going to see right through it. Let's just talk about it and just be open and honest, right?
Well, also, I thought there was one really good thing you said in the follow-up, which was you were like, it's your first game.
Yeah.
It's your team's first game.
Yeah.
And you didn't overscope it for a start.
Yeah.
And, oh my God, if you could write yourself, you could tattoo on your forehead saying, don't overscope your game and commit to it, and then start overscoping in the middle of it. So
we did. I will, and I know my team will kick my ass if I don't say it. There were some times where we were like, okay, what are we actually building here? Because this is getting to be a lot bigger than what we initially thought. I think it happens way more often than people realize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, we talk about finding the fun being the most important part of it. And I think not having that sort of almost toxic positivity, and that's what's so heartbreaking for me for sometimes, and I know this is going to sound really weird, but heartbreaking for things like Concord and Highguard is people never go into this stuff saying, I want to make a game that doesn't do well. They don't.
Yep.
And you know, especially now when people make a game, like you guys making a game, they often don't have an expectation they're even going to make money.
Yeah.
There's that small little part of you that goes, I hope I do. But people are clearly often doing it for the fun of it. And so there's sort of this devastating element. But I do think it's really important to call out the truths and speak truth to power and all that kind of stuff, or when things go wrong.
Yeah.
And sometimes it nearly always involves at least a few shady people at various levels. But yeah, you know, that overscoping is a big challenge, especially when you finally find the fun. That first time you have a playtest of your game and you're like, whoa, and you get like chills and it's fun. And then the team just gets so inspired and someone's like, man, we could do this and we could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it can be heartbreaking. You release it and you head into those mixed reviews.
Yeah.
But I think, it's a tough one, because I think there's a lot of good that comes out from the voice that gamers and content creators have. I think it's achieved a lot of value in where the industry's going. But it is just a brutal landscape for your first game.
Yeah.
That's I would just, if I may interject real quick, as the one Nimrod on this call who has not made a game, just from the outside, I appreciate you guys when you own stuff like that, and you can tell instantly when Fry and when you talk about your games that you're just trying to make a good game. You want people to have fun.
Yep.
You want to show your art. You want to express yourself through your game and people to enjoy it. And that comes across. That's why I love doing podcasts like this and being a part of Fry's. I'm honored to be here, is to communicate that, because we do some of these dev interviews and you always hear that you guys aren't trying to, make a bad game or anything like that. It's just difficult to do. But also, I think whenever you guys do just own it and communicate that, as a player who pays attention to that, it comes across really quickly that you guys aren't doing anything. Like, you didn't do any of that stuff on purpose to have those hard times, like to have to do that stuff to Icarus and come out with those weekly updates and stuff like that. And then on the flip side, also from my point of view, that's awesome what you guys did, and should be definitely commended. And I love telling those stories. But just more devs communicating that. And I also, like, with a lot of my questions that I have too are about education of players on the difficulties that you guys face. And that's what I like to hear. I love that communication.
I think a lot of it, though, involves reaching this point of owning your mistakes. I think that's probably one thing the military really helped me with, was separating the mistakes I made from who I was. So, that idea, what's the two worst things someone can say to me? Probably shouldn't say this because there'll be a heap of people start trolling me about it.
Yeah.
But, saying you're being the two terrible things in the New Zealand Army, one is being a liar and the other is being a coward. Those are you want to get me swinging. It's definitely call someone a coward. So I think, there's just a lot of mistakes we made with Icarus. There's a lot of mistakes made with DayZ. And I think you get better by looking at them. And then the worst mistakes are the ones you can't fix.
Right.
And I think in life, that's true, right? Yep. There are a lot of mistakes you make that you can't turn around. And in game dev, there's a lot of those. And I think game devs avoid those and saying those because it can be the stench of death. But like with transients, I saw, Big Fry, you were in there on the forums yourself, like in there talking to people and having a good old Big Fry argument. And I mean, I've always, again, maybe it's the soldier coming out of me. I kind of like that, I'll get in there and argue with a customer on Discord. And I've had to modulate it a bit because, I grew up with an older brother and we fought we fist fought until we were so big that we were going to start to cause damage. But that's kind of in my blood. But yeah, I thought that was really good. And I totally agree that I wish we were in an environment where more devs did that. Yeah. And it's funny because sometimes someone will say something on the forums and it'll be super nasty. And I'll go in and be like, well, that's wrong, and blah, 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 blah. And the person will be like, oh my God, I didn't really think that a dev would come in and respond. But little sorry, my core points I think are true, but I probably did that the wrong way. So I wonder whether if we did that more often in game dev, it's almost like a little bit of a superpower if you can do it.
Yeah.
So, I love
What were you going to say,
I love that intel. I love that intel because there's things like you could have had the people, at your Icarus launch, you had to switch to dedicated servers and they could have been upset at that. But then you communicate to us, it costs you $150K, just continuously out of your pocket to keep that running. And that's when I would be like, oh, okay, I get it. Adding context to some of the decisions it goes such a long way. I think at least to reasonable people. There's always, the wild ones on the internet, but I love the education that we can get from talking to people like you and the thought that goes into some of the decisions that we might not understand as players because we don't know what challenges you guys are dealing with behind the scenes. So that's why I like the comms.
Yeah. Well, and that's the biggest thing is it's all about communication. Right. And I think more game devs would be, I guess, more receptive to those conversations if they don't always derail into just toxic, right? When I respond to somebody, for me, it's off the cuff. Okay, I don't agree with that, blah, 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 blah. And then I don't even think about it. But to that person, they might get offended because a game, I'm a customer. They might get offended because they're a fan of the channel. And then it festers and it causes more problems and that's why a lot of people just kind of pull out of it. But I'm just so passionate about the conversation. I'm never angry about it. I'm talking to you, you can talk shit, but if you say something that I think is just inherently wrong or I disagree with a feature this, design that, I just want to talk about it. I'm going to fire off and just have conversations. So,
well, that's always been my motto, radical transparency. Again, I think I've had to modulate it as I've gotten older because I think a lot of people aren't. Even people I work with aren't really ready for that level of honesty because it hurts.
It does.
If you, the reality you have to face when you make something and something's sort of badly broken in it, maybe even and especially something you can't fix, to actually front up with that is very confronting and very challenging. But I think if you want to get better at making games, you have to do it. And that was just so apparent to me when my DayZ contract went up. It was like, I got a lot to do. I got lucky. I got so lucky. And I was like, I shouldn't waste that. So I need to get better each time. And that's really hard. And I think that was what, to me, was really good with transients is immediately you went out there. And I think you also very gently actually pointed out, hey, this is our first game. We didn't overscope it. We went out there and delivered it. And maybe the most dangerous part for you is you were always going to go in with this bigger following than a new first dev would have.
For sure.
And that comes with all this expectation.
Yep.
And that's where I think Steam reviews are often a measure of met expectations, not necessarily raw quality.
Yeah.
So if someone doesn't really expect something to be not janky or whatever and stuff like that, then the game might be very positive, because it met or exceeded their expectation.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, because I think I'm going in with an audience of people who I think are more critical about games. That's just kind of what my branding was. And so we had that high expectation. That being said, I also don't think we would have been anywhere near as successful if I didn't have the audience kind of coming in here as well. And I wanted to make that distinction as well, because like when I first started it, it was, I'm going to prove everybody wrong. I can do this. But realistically, I'm in a very blessed position to where we had 10, 12 years of audience build up to then be able to deliver that product. Most, if not almost all game developers don't have that same opportunity, right? And so, yeah, I don't know, just the last 3 years have really opened my eyes to a lot of the inner workings. And this is why I love conversations like this, because, I mean, people probably they couldn't even fathom the fact that you guys are spending $150,000 a month when you throw a financial tie to it. And that's why a decision is being made. That I think just across the board, everybody will understand. There's just a lot that goes into this shit.
Yeah, and I mean, it's similar for me. So it's funny because I remember, because I still get death threats over DayZ, which is hilarious.
Crazy.
For a while, I actually had a contact at the FBI when it was big, who I'd send death threats to, because I'd get the most crazy death threats. But I remember there was a journalist. It was a journalist. It might have been for Washington Post or something. It was for a big journal agency. Maybe it was I can't remember. Anyway. Was like talking to me about how difficult that would be or whatever. And I was like, man, I tell you what, my worst day as a game dev, just nothing compared to my worst day in the military.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, boo-hoo, some people said some mean stuff about me online. They're like, then someone else talks about it. It's like PC Gamer writes an article and there's a bunch of mean people saying stuff like go finish DayZ or something.
Yeah.
It's like how many game devs would wish for, I post something spicy on Twitter or Reddit and PC Gamer writes an article. That's the dream for a game.
Right.
So I'm super duper lucky.
Great.
Like, I mean, look, and sometimes it does get very frustrating. Mostly I get frustrated when people go out and they say Dean Hall, cash grab or whatever. And I'm like, hey, there's like 70 people working on this game. It's like they're the ones that are doing the bulk of the work. So that's, I think, when it gets rough.
Yeah. Last question about last question in my mind here. Rocketworks, Icarus team size versus where you guys are at now. Has it gotten bigger since then?
No, so at the height of Icarus development, we were spending $1 million US a month on dev costs.
Holy fuck!
And we had I think just under 100 people.
Wow.
We're about 70 now, but we didn't have to do layoffs from any of those teams.
Good for you.
We just kind of let crypto eat away at the edges, because we had a few really good staff members who got offered like many deep into nearly into the seven figures, and we were like, okay, we can't compete with that. And so that we just kind of let attrition whittle it down a bit. So we're at about 70 now, which is a pretty good healthy size for us. But we will start with Icarus's resurgence, we might even, I've been talking with the team, they'll probably be, people may be a bit scared me saying this. We've been thinking about, should we do another big expansion after the one we're about ready to do now? But we'll be thinking about what the big thing is. I'd really like to look into PvP again, and maybe our tech is at the point where we could deliver it. Maybe. But I'd want to do a whole bunch of pre-production. So the Icarus team is smaller than it was before. But actually we're probably going to recruit two more people if there's anyone out there. We're probably going to bring on another programmer and another designer.
Cool.
It's
Awesome.
awesome. I have so many self-indulgent questions about behind the scenes stuff, so I might rapid fire some of those if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, going back to the beginning just a little bit, as I would consider you one of the founders of the survival genre. It's what's super cool to talk to you. I was curious about like the inspiration for DayZ. You know, you kind of said it was around that military time. Was that something like during your military time or your exercises that you're out doing that you're like, oh, I need to do this? Or did it like evolve over time to where, because it's just so cool to me, like the two worlds colliding. It's not oftentimes you have a soldier that also wants to be a game dev. So I'm just curious how those melded. Was it over time or was it like a light bulb thing where you wanted to start modding to get that kind of genre going?
When I was in the Air Force, I was heavily involved with computers, simulation, predictions, stuff like that, and a whole bunch of ancillary stuff around that. And so when I went into the Army, it was very rare for an officer to go from the Air Force to the Army. It's normally the other way, right? Army officer gets sick of living in a dirt hole and wants to go live in hotels. Probably be a lot of funny comments now about that. But so it was very strange. And actually, I qualified for my long service medal as an officer cadet. So I had to go. The Army said, your Air Force officer training's not good enough. They said, when they gave me the offer of service, they said, you need to do your officer training again. And I was like, all right. I think they thought I wouldn't accept it, but I was like, I love training. Training's fun. So they made me do the whole course again. And it was during the course I actually got selected to go on an exchange program to Singapore. So Singapore would send one officer trainee to New Zealand, and New Zealand would send one to Singapore. And that was really hard. It was a massive culture shock. And their training was really different. They had this survival training course. I can't remember the name of it, but it's in Brunei, and you get a little emblem. And I had approval from the New Zealand Army that if I did the training, I could wear the emblem on my uniform. And I don't know, I'm like a grown man, and I'm like, I really want this badge.
Super cool.
Well, I wanted it because no one else would have it.
Yeah,
right?
It's the same in
exactly.
games too. We want that cosmetic.
True,
Yeah, yeah,
true.
yeah.
No, I wanted the cosmetic, so I was like, I got to do this. So, and that training, I actually got really badly injured. I ended up part of the survival training. I screwed up. You're essentially supposed to survive for a few weeks on about 24 hours of food. And during the pre-training, because it's like 4 months preparing for it, I had gotten really good at catching my own food on Singapore, right? But in Brunei, different story. I caught like one tiny fish that was that big that I didn't eat. And then I got so hungry I ate it when it was rotten. So there was a whole bunch of problems that happened, and I got really sick, and I was super hungry. And then again, why does my life always come down to crappy doctors? There was this new junior doctor, and I went to him and I was like, dude, I haven't pooed in like 2 weeks, and my insides feel real funny, and I've just eaten all this food. And he's like, he gave me a laxative, and it ended up tearing my insides really bad. So I had to go have this crazy surgery.
Wow.
And I remember it was at Christmas, and my mum's pretty big on Christmas, right? And it was the like first Christmas I'd missed. And the Army were going to fly me back to New Zealand from Singapore in a private jet, massive expense. And they said no, because they were worried I was going to bleed out on the plane. So I had to have the surgery in Singapore, and the recovery was really brutal from it. And it was during that I had all this time with Armour on my laptop, and I kind of came up with this idea. And I suppose my central premise was maybe there was a way to have the emotional epiphany and like realizations I had on the survival training without putting you through that. And that was the idea. And I actually started out not developing it with zombies. I started out developing it as a way to train soldiers. And I got to try that out. When I ended up in New Zealand, I would get my soldiers and I'd get a scan of our training area, and I'd put them through in our sim center, doing what the training we were going to do, and I'd measure their performance when we went out and did it. And I found a really interesting thing. If you gave the soldier the same character each time, they played it differently than if their character was throwaway. And some of the mechanics that were in Stationeers and DayZ were in that tool originally. Yeah.
Cool.
That's super cool. That's really cool. I mean, the tearing your guts isn't cool, but that story is cool.
That's crazy.
I'd also love, we talked on Brutal just a little bit, and I was trying to research some of that. And this, every time we talk to a game dev, we talk engines, and I would love to hear your take on the advantages and disadvantages of using one that you guys made versus a pre-canned one. And I mean, like, having full control over that, but like also you have to train people when they come in how to use your stuff. Like I would love to explore that a little bit when it comes to Brutal.
I'll give you a joke answer for a start. So Unity is a great engine if you don't want to finish a game. Unreal is a great engine if you don't want to make a successful game. And that's how I categorize those two.
Yep.
You know, and to back that up a little bit, Unity's best thing is it's cheap. That's the best thing about it. It's actually really cheap. For what you're getting, it's super cheap. Unreal is really expensive if you make a successful game because it's 5% of your gross.
Yeah.
That's more than the margin of most video games. So it can get pretty pricey. Look, they're both a poor workman blames their tools. I think they both have their place, absolutely, and I think for most uses they're very important. But we really want, for me, if later on, hopefully in 10 years' time, I want people to think of me. I want them to think of performance, stability, quality, and we just weren't delivering those, no matter what we did. And the closest we'd get to it was like with Stationeers, where we wrote nearly all of the game outside of Unity. So we're like, why are we using Unity?
Right.
And a couple of our team actually come from the Path of Exile team. Ryan, our head of engineering, is a total genius. So after a while, we were like, why are we getting you to make tools? You want to just have a crack at making what we call a framework.
Yeah.
And it's named Brutal for a reason. It's pretty brutal to use. You know, you can't walk 10 meters or 2 meters in our studio without tripping over a graphics programmer. But I think, in my opinion, customers are more and more really wanting performance. Yep. They want the game to run performant. And I love Icarus. We're about to do a new DLC, and I have been playing it, and I love it. I'm having a great time. But it breaks my heart when you run around and there's a stutter. And we would have spent, I don't know, $4 million trying to solve that. Like, we have just poured money into that. And it's very frustrating. And I actually confronted Tim Sweeney in person about this at a Tencent summit. I wish I could get video of that. And
body cam next time.
Yeah. So I have video of it. I just don't have audio of it. But I didn't do it in a mean way. But my question was, and I've said it publicly before, is Epic accountable to developers, particularly on performance and stability? Because if your socials, your Epic and your socials are posting all these flashy things about how easy it is to do something in Unreal, how does that help, say, BigFry? Because it's not easy to deliver that at the other end. And that's where well-meaning people who are wanting to call game devs into questions will turn around and say, oh, your game's an asset flip.
Yep.
You know, it's slop or whatever. Are there asset flips? Absolutely. But in many cases, just, you know, we people would say that our Deer and Icarus were asset flips. And I was like, man, I wish they were, because we spend like $10,000 to $20,000 per animal doing all the animations. Yep. Particularly our world bosses get really expensive. Yeah, so I guess that's a very long-winded way. That's the core of Brutal. The idea is that you should actually be going through and talking at a low level with GPU. That was a big thing that we wanted to focus on.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That makes sense. I never thought of that before, where you're giving the 5% royalty to Unreal, and you're paying for the engine to do its job. So I get what you're saying. I never thought of that. Like, at what point are you not getting, you know, what you're supposed to out of that transaction? That's an interesting way to look at it.
And on top of it, like he said, you know, your margins for profit, you're taking 5%, you're taking 30% to Steam. Like, you're being cut down to fucking nothing. So I get it from that perspective. Do you think the benefit of, now I don't know what your guys' workflow is for onboarding, but do you think the benefit of having to then train somebody on this framework the cost obviously outweighs it if that's the route you guys wanted to take.
So my plan is actually to give the framework away for free. And the reason is because if you don't, all roads lead to Unity or Unreal. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
I think you have to give that technology away for free. We're probably going to do that on our Woo, would be the easy way to do it. I just don't think there's another way. Also, I don't think, and I deliberately don't want Brutal to be something that you use to make every video game, because then you just end up in the same problem.
Right.
Brutal is really only for something maybe not niche, but something that needs to be really performant, something that you need to just really, for sure, nail performance, stability, quality, particularly for multiplayer and stuff like that. Look at Factorio. I love Factorio. That game is made meticulously from the ground up. So yeah, I don't want to say in any way that I have even a major part of what I think will be the future, but I do think that customers are very rightly demanding performance, and game developers, including me, have fallen really short of that. Yeah. And that just really gets under my skin. Because if someone criticizes my game on something that I think is true, like they criticize and I'm like, yeah, no, you're right. Those stutters are just terrible.
Yep.
They break your immersion. We try and hide them. We're like putting makeup over them, and it's like that's unacceptable, in my opinion.
Well, and as devs, you're fighting an uphill battle because, like you said, and you pointed out, you have Epic and you have all of these, Epic developers that are working on Fortnite, that are working on these flashy demos, working on these vertical slices that look really great when they do a presentation once a year and they throw all these buzzwords out. But the education on the gaming side, on the consumer side, they have really no idea what actually is under the hood. It was a running joke throughout the entire development of Transients. Every time something fucks up with the engine, it's goddamn, all right, I'm sending Sweeney another email. So the fact that you actually confronted him on it is actually incredible. That makes me so happy.
Yeah, but it was hard for me because he was a hero of mine when I was younger, right? Doom and all that. And I'd actually met him before. And again, I'm not trying to throw a lot of shade his way. Again, Unreal is great. I don't believe that Epic are accountable to developers. And game engine manufacturers used to be. When I worked at a studio called SIDHE, and now they're called Pickpock in New Zealand, we were using Gamebryo, which is actually the engine that Bethesda used. They obviously changed it massively because Gamebryo went out of business. But I remember we would pay for Gamebryo, and you would use our version of Gamebryo. It was pretty unlikely that you were going to upgrade it. And if it didn't do what it said on the box, you would go get shitty at Gamebryo and be like, well, we want our money back. You said the game engine would do this, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
So I think it's the accountability, because developers are on the hook. We found this with Steam. There was this crazy bug with DLCs where people would buy the DLC and it wouldn't work for them. And there was actually someone who, I'm pretty sure was mentally unstable. It was someone who, it got really crazy. We had to report it to the German police. It was really weird. But this person had this problem, and I think they were a bit not together there. And it escalated, but it was many other people who had it as well. And I'd say, look, you have to talk to Steam. In the end, there was enough of them that I was like, look, you email me a video of this. And I ended up sending it to Valve, and I reported it so much. Valve told me that I needed to stop reporting it. It wasn't a bug. So I was like, okay. And then I find out, you can go find the article, like last year, they were like, oh, we fixed a bug with DLC, people purchasing it not being activated. And of course, there's no place to review Valve on that. People will review dumping us, saying, hey, I bought the DLC. And never mind, with Icarus, you can actually get around the DLC very easy with a dedicated server, because only one person needs it.
Dean, do you want to make money?
Well, no, but that's the thing.
Get the production team edit that out.
Right.
No, our DLC is supporter stuff. That's the intention of it. And I am convinced that the future of game developers surviving is that we have to establish sort of this moral right to exist with customers, which is what streamers and content creators had to do. Like and subscribe. If you want to a lot of the videos can be, the content creator explaining, hey, this is the reason why my channel's important, and if you believe that, you have to support. And I think the only way that a lot of sort of mid and lower tier game developers like myself will survive is by doing that.
Great answer.
Agreed.
Yep. Awesome.
So you kind of got your start with UGC, user generated content, in that space. I would love to get your take on the future of that, because I've heard from several developers that they think there's a lot to be had with UGC and being a big part of games. And you're talking about, your guys' cost versus, how much you make. There's really low margins on video game stuff, and offload. I mean, for lack of a better way to say it, offloading some of the development onto the community, could be another way. So I feel like just my personal opinion, it's never held very well in the AAA space with the Halo 4 stuff, the Battlefield Portal, but it kind of succeeds more in kind of the mid-tier category with the Arma stuff. And we see, I mean, Arma Reforger, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So where do you see user generated content moving forward and being a part of the ecosystem?
Yeah, full transparency, I should say. I hate calling it UGC, mostly because, and I should explain why, because the people saying UGC to me in meetings are marketing business people, and I get this sort of twitch in my eye when I start getting the business buzzwords come out. I actually have hung out quite a bit with Scott Remus, who runs mod.io.
Okay.
Amazing guy. Like, you should absolutely talk to him sometime. He actually ran Desura back in the day, the first Steam competitor. And some of the stuff he's doing with mod.io, I just find super cool. But of course, because I had a meeting with him and he was using UGC and my eye was like this. I'm like, dude, you can just call it mods. Or I actually like to strata them into separate things. So I got my start in flight simulation, and flight simulation has had paid mods for like ever.
Yep.
But we didn't call them paid mods. We called them like third-party add-ons.
Mm-hmm.
And they would often be more expensive than the game. Microsoft Flight Simulator might be like $40.
Yep.
And you'd buy this insanely detailed cockpit for an SR-71 for like $70. So Flight Sim, I think, had this really interesting situation where you had actual full companies form around, and they weren't mods. They were third-party add-ons. And they were really completely different even than a mod. And then you have this sort of mid-area of mods where, okay, maybe the aircraft wasn't great, but some of the mods were even better than the add-ons, or some of the mods were a lead-in for it. So I think there's been this long legacy of user-generated content, but I don't like lumping it all in one bucket. It's the same as maps and missions are different. It's the same as... Yeah, I don't know. I think it's essential to a lot of games. I think just vital. And I've even worked with people who've said something like, "Oh, I'm worried about how user-generated content will affect our DLC," and I'm like, "Why?" Like, because DLC purchases should be convenience purchases.
Yep.
So in Icarus, you can go out right now. It'll take you like 2 minutes to Google how easy it is to change in a JSON file for you to be able to activate stuff on our server. And I've said this for the life of the product. So in Stationeers, we haven't actually shipped this yet, but if you want the DLC, you'll be able to just change a flag in a config file. I guarantee that most people don't want to do that. One, because they feel it's a bit morally bad. Mm-hmm. And if they like the game, they're like, I should try it out. I should do that. So, yeah, I guess that's a long-winded way of saying I guess I see that user-generated content is just essential, but I don't think it should replace core functionality. And I hope Marek, I'm very good friends with Marek at Bohemia. I do feel like, for me, if I'm delivering a Reforger kind of experience, I think most people should be playing the base experience. And mods should be I want to see what else is out there. I don't really like this Robloxization of, we're just going to make the platform and the mods will do the rest.
Yep.
I personally, for me, maybe I'm getting old and I'll be replaced, but I want to see the base game have the meat in it, and the mods should be in addition to it.
Cool. So this goes right into my next question. So if someone wants to follow in your footsteps and start to get some experience in modding and eventually wants to move on to, potentially all the way to what you did in head of studio, what would be your advice for their path? Should they look for formal training, or do you think learning on your own with the resources that are available is the best path?
I think the individual paths you take to the different nodes, I don't think matter as long as there's something you'll stick with. So if you want to go to university and your friends are going to university and that's a really great path to get a grounding. I don't think it's necessary. It can help with things like visas as well. I think what's important is doing something you're going to stick with and then making use of the tools you have. If you look at BigFry and Transients, using your community, like BigFry was saying, most people starting out aren't going to have that. And then recognizing maybe that counts against. So I think doing an inventory of what your tools are that you have is super important. I think another thing BigFry said of comms, like, well, I think you might have said that, Crash, actually, as well. Getting good at doing the comms, building an audience. I was actually saying this to a veteran game dev on a private forum recently who was wanting to go it alone. And I was like, he's like, oh, I'm going to get my players on Steam and I'm going to see if the game will take off. And I'm like, you can't do that.
No.
By the time you go on Steam, okay, RimWorld, Factorio, Barotrauma, Prison Architect, Valheim, Cosmoteer, all of these games started building their community off Steam.
Yep.
Maybe they were doing a free build on Discord or on their own website.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be growing that audience. And I think, BigFry's sitting there going, well, duh, this is what content creators had to do for forever.
Yeah.
So that's where I think game devs have a lot to learn there. I think in this race to the bottom on price, discount, and subscription apocalypse, I think there's a lot that game developers can learn from how content creators built an audience.
Yep. I actually just dropped a video on this 2 weeks ago. I basically said, 2025, they put the stats out, 21,000 games got released. Yep. How do you stand out? And that's what it's all about, is building off Steam. It's the same as Crash, you and I both see it in the content space when we're talking about how do you grow over on Twitch. Well, 10 years ago, it was really easy to just go and stream 8 hours and you might get discovered. Well, now you need the TikTok, the Instagram, you need the YouTube, you need to just basically pollinate everywhere. And you're right. I think a lot of game developers don't think about that, or they sign up to really terrible marketing agencies who then take just incredible prices to be able to market games, and all that entails is them sending an email that people just end up deleting anyway. It's a whole new ball game now. And so I don't know. I hope with these kind of conversations we can at least spread the gospel that you need to be doing more. And I know it sucks because you're still even for me, man, juggling content creation and also being, hands-on in engine 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week. That's a lot, but
that's exactly what I was going to say. To have the bandwidth, I understand why it happens though, right? Because you're locked in on making your game and getting this project done.
Yep.
Or even Fry, has his awesome channel that he's built over the years in a huge community. He had to take a little bit of a step back from that to have the bandwidth to do both things. So it's a lot, man.
Yeah, that's why
I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I totally think as well. It's that with that bandwidth, it's that emotional toll that it takes in terms of building it. Because I have a lot of friends who started streaming DayZ and are huge superstars now.
Yeah.
And I just sort of see in them. Actually, I've tried occasionally to make little bits of content, but it can be really anxiety inducing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's there's a developer that I do really want to speak to. I haven't had the privilege, but I don't know. Have you ever heard of Road to Vostok, Dean?
Yes. I don't know the devs of them though, sadly, but
it's a solo guy. That guy is
cool.
An absolute legend when it comes to actually doing the devlogs. He edits 30-minute devlogs and he's putting them out regularly while he's working on the game. It's fucking insane.
He's a monster.
Monster.
I think there's one thing that devs are bad at that I think content creators are better at in this area, and that's authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had a conversation with some devs. So I'll have arguments with customers or fellow developers in the company on our Discord. And that's important because it's that authenticity. So if you do it performatively, if you just, I'm going to make a Discord and I'm going to post stuff in there. We post live change logs, in our Discords. We post live reviews in our Discord. So you can't sort of half step in. And I think to most content creators, I find they're like, well, of course. But that's not something that's obvious to devs. They're used to going and reading a tutorial saying, sign up for TikTok. Post a video that does this thing. And it's like, no. It's got to be consistent. We see this. So the console version of Icarus is coming out.
Yeah.
And the console version is made by a separate studio, some buddies of mine from DayZ days. And they trust their marketing company too much. I'm like, guys, your marketing company works for you. It's hard for me because I'm like, guys, just like, I'd rather screw up occasionally by being authentic than have some marketing company just roll all over it.
So okay. I had another question queued up, but now finding out. So the console port of Icarus not being done in-house.
No, that's right. It's being done by Grip. Yeah. Mostly I didn't want to. Also, I'm terrible on console.
Sure.
Like I would. Yeah. And there were a lot of changes that had to happen to Icarus that I wouldn't have done, like for the controller.
Yeah.
So it was important to get people who were used to doing that.
So follow up to that, because we had a lot of people reach out to us to do that console porting. And in my heart, I couldn't trust another studio to do it because I don't know what the quality level is going to be like. Now, obviously you said you know these guys, you trust them. What's that been like? Because one of your 3 pillars that you've mentioned throughout this entire thing has been quality. How does your quality control take over when you're talking about, potentially leaving it to other people?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a challenge, but I think that's a challenge you face just as a CEO in general. It's like the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. Goes both ways. It means sometimes you do have to accept something's going to slip here.
Yeah.
If you're a total perfectionist, nothing comes through.
True.
And I learned this from Mark Spaniel, who's the CEO of Bohemia. He was just the best boss because I would be like, I want to do this thing. And he's like, well, that's crazy. I don't think you should do that. And he'd give me a list of reasons, but then often he'd be like, but you make the decision. I just want you to hear me out. Your decision. And there were a couple of times when I would do something and I would have screwed up. And I remember going to his office once and going, I'm so sorry. You were totally right. And he was like, don't apologize. Like, I backed you. I gave you the feedback and I backed you. So I'm part of this as well. But he's like, this is how you learn. So I think there's an element of that. It's like I shouldn't be sitting there from the sidelines sniping every little thing that that team gets wrong, especially considering 99% of the work is stuff we did. So if there's performance issues that we created on PC, why should we be blaming them on console? So there was a lot of early on discussion technically around things that we should do or get them to do on console to deal with some of those things. I was actually surprised that performance was one of the things that when I played on console that actually wasn't as much of a problem. Part of that's because of concessions they made. How you mine the rocks is not as cool as on the PC. Stuff like that.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Awesome. I'm excited for the console launch. Just watching the porting process for some of these things is really, really cool.
Yeah, the screenshots are garbage on the store page. Hopefully they'll change them. But I'm really picky with screenshots. And really savage with them. And I think game developers need to be more savage. Show them to a friend of yours who's got no filter.
Yeah.
And same with trailers. People tend to make trailers. I give my trailers, if I ever make them or I have made, I give them to someone who I know is going to be unfiltered with me, and they'll nearly always come back 30 seconds taken off. You want the trailer to be edited because you love the scenes you've put in a lot.
Yep.
But they don't. Your customer doesn't. They're like,
care.
I've seen. Yeah, they don't care. I want to see the next thing. So.
Yeah, it's crazy. I have one more question, kind of going back to your workflow with Brutal. In researching for this discussion, you guys have been very open about using LLMs and your use of AI at the studio. Now, you were talking. Well, I just want to get into it. How do you feel about
Finally,
the current?
some spicy questions.
Yeah,
man.
this one.
Let's get into it.
I don't
Let's
want to
do
put you on the spot with it, but there's a growing a spice around the use of AI in game development. And I kind of want to know what your thoughts are on the current discussions about generative AI, and then how you guys are also utilizing LLMs in your workflow. How do you feel?
So, I mean, my biggest problem with generative AI is it just doesn't produce anything of anywhere near enough quality to deliver the performance I want.
Mhm.
I mean, with Brutal, we we have a saying at the studio now: a byte is still a byte, like BYTE. You know,
Okay. Yep.
a base unit of a computer. And I think we lost that as game devs a bit. We were like, oh, RAM is limitless, network is limitless, bandwidth to the GPU is limitless. It's not. Every vertice that you upload has a cost.
Mhm.
Sure, you can upload heaps of them. So for us, we're probably heading in the opposite direction with assets. We really go through them heavily. One area that I found LLMs really good for is learning.
Yeah.
Particularly for learning a complex code base. So, you know, an LLM is just the tokenization of language. And so Brutal is made, unlike Unity and Unreal, there's no editor because I hate the editor. So I'd love to say we planned this, but just sort of by accident, LLMs came along at the same time as we said, well, we're going to make a framework that's basically just language based. And that made it very easy to tokenize. So what we would do is produce our documentation and standards. And when someone like Felipe is learning to use Brutal and onboard, we call it getting brutalized. He ended up doing what I did, which is I would just copy sections of the documentation into an LLM like ChatGPT or Gemini or something and say, hey, I understand these parts, but I don't. What is a descriptor set in Vulkan? And it'll be like, oh yeah, I know what Vulkan is. So, and I can see from this, it's that. And so I think as a learning tool, as people powered AI, I think I'm pretty bullish on that. Particularly for people I've seen who have programmers who have dyslexia have traditionally had a really tough time because they misspell functions.
Yep.
Whereas if you use something like Copilot, not the Microsoft Copilot, but the AI IDE code Copilot, that can be really good for helping correct some of those dyslexia problems as well. So I think AI assistance, particularly in code and particularly in learning code, I'm very bullish on because it doesn't get tired and you can call it on its bullshit. I think that's the big challenge is how do you get someone from knowing no code to the point where they can use an LLM to learn an advanced technique like graphics programming.
Very great.
So
answer.
we don't, I guess performance wise, and City Skylines would be a classic example. I think City Skylines 1, a lot of the assets were very meticulously prepared to be very performant with the way that they render stuff. In fact, the way we render stuff with Brutal is very similar to City Skylines 1. With City Skylines 2, they went pretty deep in on generative approaches to mesh, which definitely I can see why someone might be interested in. I'm not throwing shade at them from there. It's just I haven't seen any evidence that even brings the level of optimization that we need. I'm even a little skeptical about Nanite on Unreal. Yes, it delivers some areas, but I think it doesn't in other areas. So yeah, but I'm skeptical about everything, even our own stuff.
Right, for sure. Very cool. Awesome.
I think I'll throw a question out there. I think spicy.
Sure.
The DLC approach. So, we cop not much flack really, but a little flack occasionally. People will sometimes open up Icarus and there'll be hundreds of DLC, and that's a turnoff for a lot of people. And I would say I agree. That's why with Kitten Space Agency, I want to try something different. I have asked Valve a lot if we could stratify different kinds of DLC. I'd love there to be like, this worked quite well for us saying, okay, expansions Expansions are, I finished the game and I want to keep going.
Yeah.
And I loved expansions from board games when I was a kid. I was obsessed with like Space Crusade and Heroes Quest, and they had expansions, and I loved it. So expansions are only really for those kind of super fans. It's like I got to the end of the game and I want more.
Yeah.
Then I see this middle ground of like content packs. Those might be mostly cosmetic in nature, different kinds of furniture.
Yeah.
Or we have these outposts, which are like small snippets of worlds that we actually thought were going to be worthless, but we kind of put them out there as supporters content. Then I think there's raw supporters content, which is pointless stuff, almost like Give Me a Coffee. And I really wish Valve allowed you and had rules around what those different ones were.
Yeah.
Because I think, there's a game called Battle Brothers, which does really cool. They have like maybe $100 worth of supporters content. And it's clearly labeled as that, but I think it's sort of easy to miss and see. No,
sure.
To me, not all DLC is the same.
I agree with that. I think, and to your point, you go to a storefront, you see 100, different DLCs or whatever. I actually like the DLC model. I hate that we have moved away from expansions and DLCs like that. So for me, yeah, at first I'm going to be like, oh, there's a lot of stuff to purchase. So my initial buy-in is going to be, you need all this extra content, but I'm also kind of a completionist in that I want everything. If I like the game, I want everything. But I miss expansions. We talking about Battlefield recently, like
I was talking about that last week, how it's almost like a contract that the player goes into with the studio. Even if you have like the premium DLC, like we used to get in like the Battlefield days, but like, I don't know. It's just kind of an understanding I have. Like I'm paying money for more content to play on a game that I like. The stuff's not free. At the same time, when I'm paying you money, I expect it to be, pretty damn good quality and a lot of stuff to do. It's almost like, it's just like a business transaction as a contract kind of thing. I know what I'm getting for this money. And I appreciate that, because the live service stuff, when you get free content, I feel like studios have, like bigger ones especially, have that out route. Like they don't have to commit to anything. If something's going on or it costs them a bunch of money, the skins aren't selling that good, they can do way less content, get away with it, because nothing was planned ahead of time or kind of worked out in that contract. So
I hadn't thought about it. That's very true.
Yep, it's crazy.
I think as well, one thing we'd asked Valve about was, I really wanted them to do a categorized DLC, and with expansions, I wanted them to have a 2-hour refund window as well. Because for us, like if you look at an expansion, we price the expansions nearly at the same price of the base game.
Yep.
Because we spend 2 years working on them. But compare that to a $1 or $2 like horse armor or something. They're not the same.
Yeah.
You should absolutely be able to get a time-based refund for an expansion. As a developer, I want you to. I don't want you to have to gamble on an expansion, because the other option is I do a sequel, right?
Yeah, right.
But that's a whole other thing. It restarts your revenue clock with Valve and everything else. So, and you have to change a whole bunch of stuff, and it's a lot of outlay. So for me, I like expansions, but I don't like that someone wanting to buy the expansion, they're committed like up front. So I think that's a shame. But yeah, I think I understand people's concern, because I also think people have been burned a lot with DLC too. And it's something I hope that we innovate in a good way in video games. We should be providing more information. It comes back to comms, I guess. We should be providing a clear indicator of what these different kinds of DLC are, giving customers ways to get out of, say, an expansion. If they might love the game, buy the expansion, be like, not for me.
Yep.
Yeah. But that's what I like, where if you add the comms on top of that model, to where it's like, I know I can spend, like $70, I can budget that for the year, and I'm going to get all the DLC, and I know that I'm going to get 3 more maps this year. And I know what I'm getting going into it. So then when I invest that limited amount of time that I have, I know I'm investing it in an ecosystem that's going to continue to give me content. And everybody knows going into it, the player and the devs, like what they're getting out of it.
Yep.
You guys can budget because you know how much money's coming in. The players know that we got more content coming, and everything's more out front, because I feel like there's ways to get out of making content if you do that. Everything playable in the future is free, and well, you kind of get what you pay for sometimes.
Yeah. Most of the time.
Did we want to talk about wild stuff? Because the Unity license thing, Unity
Yeah.
license thing got a little hairy there in 2025. So I just kind of saw the headlines and stuff about Unity threatening DayZ developer to take away licensing and stuff. And I guess that kind of could have been tied into what we were talking about with the engine talk and kind of getting what you paid for on that. But how did you juggle and navigate that when you hear of being, potentially losing your engine license for a game you have out there?
Well, to be fair, I'm
What
pretty
happened?
sure what happened is that they used an LLM or an AI or something to just go through and look for licenses that were mismatched.
Mhm.
Maybe someone at home was working on their own personal projects, and because they do a lot of snooping. If you look at what Unity does, they do a whole bunch of IP snooping and stuff. So now they might be like, oh, we see that um, uh, Rocketworks has this number of licenses, but we can see that this person who's maybe working from home is also logging into Unity on this other license. So I'm pretty sure we just got triggered by that. My concern with it all is people don't tend to follow stuff forward. They don't run through what this means. So you can go out and look at Unity's financials. I think Unity has one option, which is to do a rev share model like Unreal, right?
Yep.
Like it's the only way they survive. They are burning cash. They made some terrible investments
Yep.
that they sold off and lost money on. So they're doomed. And what does that mean for a dev, right? We've been making Stationeers for nearly 10 years. We lose money on it. I don't care. I love that game. It is a nerdy game and it's super niche. But I love that game exists, and it doesn't cost us too much money, and it is a bit frustrating because we have like 6 or 7 people working on it, and then a small DLC or Icarus will outsell it each day, so we make more money from one cosmetic DLC on Icarus than we do from this thing that we're sweating on. But I'm really scared of a day that Unity gets bought out by some evil private equity firm who then just ratchets the cost up.
It would be Tencent.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so Tencent technically have a minority share in my company. Although, if you want to buy some shares, you're going. So, my plan is actually to have Rocketworks wholly owned by me by the end of the year.
Awesome.
That'd be cool.
I want to be able to take a lot more risks than. I mean, I don't have any restrictions. I have control over the board completely.
For sure.
But this is where you're totally right. I worry about that future of where a big company buys Unity and they're just looking at the margins and they just ramp that.
Mhm.
They just ramp that cost up. And then what does that mean? Or let's look at the nightmare scenario where Unity goes out of business. Your editor stops working.
Yep.
Am I going to have to download a pirated version?
Yep.
Like I want to be updating Stationeers when I'm in a retirement home. You know what I mean? Like,
so did any of that kind of thought process go into why you guys started to work on Brutal and why you felt like you needed to develop that?
Oh, it's really funny. We started working on Brutal like maybe 3 years ago, and it was such a dumb thing to do that we didn't even. It was secret in the studio. People were like, "What's Ryan doing?" Oh, he's just doing some tool stuff. Because if you said to someone, "Oh, we're developing our own like engine tech," people would be like, "Oh, you've lost your mind."
Yeah.
You've done that level of dude who made DayZ stupidity. You've moved on from the Lamborghinis to the I'm going to make a game engine. And it was probably around the initial Unity rev share kerfuffle when Unity said, "Hey, we're going to start charging a percentage." That's when suddenly it started seeming like, hey, maybe this we've got our own tech is a good idea. And then we started having big wins. So Stationeers, the multiplayer was garbage. It was using Unity's UNet. And we actually ripped that out and rewrote a technology called RackNet. And it was the team who made Brutal. That was their first thing they did. They actually made that library. And that made us go, wow, that actually might help us. So yeah, it was it came in at a similar time, and it started seeming like more and more of a good idea. Really, it was about agency. If a customer comes to me with a problem, I want to be able to fix that problem for them.
Right.
And if I just have to shrug and go, well, hopefully Fortnite has this problem and we upgrade, or that's my big issue. And I don't want to sound like I'm crapping all over Steam. Steam, there's a lot that we have to be thankful for, but they're not accountable to developers, definitely not. And we get blamed for a lot of things. There was a Steam outage recently that hit us and Project Zomboid and a few other games. And there was no outage notification from Steam. I went out, I was on the Project Zomboid forums going, hey guys, this is actually a Steam outage. And we got a whole bunch of refunds from it. I went through and found the refunds.
Yeah.
And negative reviews. And it's like, man, I feel like, yes, there's a lot of crappy developers, but there's a lot of developers that get squeezed from problems that really are Epic or Steam.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Well, did you have anything, Fry, before I ask my last question? I've been dying to ask this whole entire time.
Honestly, I've been dying to have you ask it. No, honestly, this has been a fucking great conversation.
So cool, man.
Go.
Yeah.
All right. You guys don't know, for those of you playing at home, this man summited Mount Everest.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to know, the question that I've been wanting to ask for like ever since Fry told me we were going to talk to you is, what's more difficult, summiting Mount Everest or releasing a game in 2026?
Releasing a game, for sure.
That's
wild.
Crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I think there's this
think
emotional moment. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I want you to speak to this, but I think I read there's only like 40 some people from your country that have summited before. And not that many. So it's crazy.
I did an article with Wired a long time ago, and the guy told me that more people have gotten gold medals at the Olympics than have summited Mount Everest.
Yep.
Which I thought was a wild stat.
And then you're saying the game is more difficult. That's crazy.
Well, emotionally, like I'm looking at Fry's face here, and I'm like, I can see the pain, the extra. There's just this emotional element. Unless you're a psychopath, I'm sure if you're a psychopath and you're a total scammer, you don't care. But I think most people who release a game, it's a part of them. You're cutting off little bits of yourself and putting it in.
Yep.
And it almost always doesn't go that well. Even good games don't go that well. Fortnite went badly.
Yeah.
And then they had this little mode. So, like, there's this tremendous emotional cost. And I'm not saying this so that gamers pull their punches. I don't think that's true at all. All content creators. Like, Fry, you, Crash, you should all be calling me on my bullshit, because I'll make mistakes. Always will make mistakes. But I do think that at least acknowledging that sort of human, there is this emotional component that's in there. And I think that's hard. And in some ways, things like climbing Everest is easy because you become a robot. It's why I like the military. It's why I like mountaineering and scuba diving, because everything's easy. All the decisions are easy because you're just trying to stay alive. Maybe that's why I like survival games. It makes things easy. It's outside of that. It's real life. It's relationships. It's releasing your game and talking to customers. That's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, no, we all said at the end of it that it took a chunk out of everybody that I don't know if our team was ready for that.
I don't think you're ever ready. You're never ready for it.
No, there were times this last year we saw a lot of progress with it, but 2024 there were times, and even going back and watching because we record every time we do like dev meetings and testing the game and stuff, and just seeing where the game was a year and a half ago and knowing how dreadful everybody felt about it. But it's a battle of attrition that I don't, and it's one of those things where you don't want to sit there and sound arrogant about it, where it's like, you guys will never understand what it, but realistically, like there's an aspect of it that I don't think anybody who hasn't gone through it actually fully grasps how fucking hard it is to develop a video game. It's crazy.
It is. And at that emotional cost in there, and I don't want to get all woe is me. Oh, everyone needs to feel sorry for CEOs particularly. But I remember with me, it was about halfway through the studio's life, I had to do, for the first time in my career, layoffs. And it was, we originally had 2 studios. Well, we originally had 1 studio in Dunedin, and a lot of our early projects failed. The public one was Ion, but we had a lot of private ones that failed. And we ended up with this team that was just really going nowhere. And so we offered people to move to Auckland, another city, to work on Icarus and games like that. And we had some teams that remained in Dunedin, but I had to lay people off for the first time in my life. I had to lay my mum off. I had to lay my sister off, and my sister's partner. So it was hard, but I remember it was very difficult. And that was the moment I was like, I'm finally prepared to be the CEO, because I knew that it was that or we were going out of business.
Yep.
And maybe that's the interesting thing about the Ashes of Creation situation. I'm really surprised that it was so fell off a cliff, because normally you see this stuff coming a long way in advance, and you might try and do a small layoff to avert the problem. What it did was it made me prepared to be more involved early on, because I was like, I never want to be in a room and do that again. Yeah. So I'm like, I will be rude and difficult and insist that we meet milestones or scrap projects early instead of letting them fester. Because that's what happened. When I started the studio, I said, I've got this money, I want some cool games. And I was just I wasn't being a CEO. I was just a guy who had money, who was paying people to make games. And people would turn around and be looking for someone to be the adult. And that should have been me, because I was the person who could come in and say, this game is garbage. It's not even going to come out. Because if you do it early, you can move on to something else. If you do it late, you're talking about layoffs.
Yeah.
So that was the moment, I think, for me. I was finally ready. I was like, look, I'm prepared to make those tough calls, and I never want to make that call again. And I was like, I'm prepared to do the conversations earlier. If people need to think I'm mean earlier, then fine. If I don't have to be really mean later.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then at least they still have their job, hopefully, at the end of it. So
that's right.
Perfect. Dean, I respect the hell out of you. Honestly, your entire journey for the last, what's it been, 15 years now? Something like that. It's fucking crazy. It's inspiring. And I appreciate you giving us the time to chat with you today.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I
super appreciate the work you guys do, keeping even us to account and stuff like that. I think that's super important. That's why whenever I talk with content creators, I have the same rule. It's like, you know, I don't require you to be nice about me and stuff like that. I think that if we want to survive going forward, we have to establish this moral right to exist, which means having tough conversations. And I think content creators play a pretty important role in that.
Yep. I appreciate you saying that, because I think that's something that I really had to face going into that launch. Was now I got to play both roles here. And that's something that I knew was going to happen, but once you're in it, it's just like, okay, this is going to be an interesting time. And I think that whole journey made me a better person, just from just being able to analyze situations and how these games get made and some of the shit that you guys go through. I'm just going to say it. You're sitting here saying you guys are spending $1 million a month. I have anxiety knowing what we went through. I can't even imagine being in your position.
We're not spending that now. We spend about maybe 700,000. So,
that's it.
You're right.
A month. Yeah. We pay pretty well, which has managed to get us to retain really good people.
You guys are killing
last year, I know we were probably just about to finish, and here I am starting something.
Who cares?
Last year, we were looking at a pretty bad year, actually. And then it was funny, because in April, March, I was like, man, I think we're going to be dipping into the piggy bank, you know? And then it definitely turned around. But again, we do no dividends. My plan is to make the company completely independent and run a really good employee, just give some of the shares back to the employee rather than private equity.
Yep.
So that's the approach that I want to do at the moment, and start to try some radical things. But I think super challenging year, I'm sure, for content creators as well. And I think we've headed into a challenging year as well.
Yep.
So, but we get through it by having honest conversations, and sometimes those are pretty tough.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, if you ever want to come talk about those radical ideas again, come on back.
Absolutely. I would
and also,
love.
I would be down for a podcast about mountaineering and just hear all those stories.
Hell yeah.
But there's also, so I went to visit my brother and his family to try and be a good uncle because I had been being a terrible one. And my brother's massive hunter, and he basically barreled me up because a bunch of the guns in Icarus just make no sense. We have a repeater that uses the wrong ammunition.
Yeah.
And I have friends of mine in the army emailing me all the time, like, your sights are wrong and this and that. I'm like, I didn't do it.
I try not to do that.
Yeah.
I'm a competitive shooter.
My next game, I hope I get that right. So,
any inkling as to, or are you talking about Kitten Space Agency or future?
No, not at all. What? No. This is a big game.
Any inkling as to what that could possibly be?
I'm not done with zombies, and I'm not done with I'd really like to do a proper PvP.
You've been saying that.
I was a bit sad to see how BattleBit ended up because I'm interested in scale.
Yep.
Which is why I'm like, Unreal and Unity just don't cut it for me. So I'd really like to look at something that put masses of players together.
Awesome.
And I suppose I've been working to hit that for the last 15 years. And maybe our tech is at the point where we can deliver on it. And that's why if you look at Kitten Space Agency, we're looking at ways, how can we draw 500,000 rocks? How can we draw this and that? And the multiplayer side of it. I know they don't seem like they're related, but all of the graphics and the stuff we do in that, to me, it's proving grounds for a big PvP game.
Yep.
I watched some of those videos about placing the terrain and changing the rocks, some of those videos you guys have on the devlogs, and it's really interesting to me, especially knowing that that's you guys' own engine. So that's promising stuff. It's cool to see.
Very cool. All right. So last time they want to get involved, where's the best way they can get involved with everything RocketWorks?
Well, you can check out Icarus. We do sales on it pretty quickly. I think definitely I hope people refund it if it's not for them and it's not perfect. Stationeers are super nerdy. Again, it's on Steam as well. Woo is the place you can download Kitten Space Agency for free. And don't give any money unless you were really happy with it. I fund it and I'm happy for it to lose money. It's fine for it. But if you like it, then support it. The team appreciates that. I think they love seeing that.
Awesome. I think with that, we'll head back to the lobby.
All right, guys, we are back to the lobby and just wanted to take a second to reflect on that a little bit. Also, like a super special thank you to Dean Hall, man, taking the time to do that. We just, like I said in the interview, we talked for an hour and a half about how busy he was, and he just sat down with us for that long and let us ask anything. So that was pretty cool of him. And I just thought that was a really cool episode. Like my biggest takeaway from that was just how much money it costs to keep a game running. You think of the development costs, and he threw some of those figures out there about like how much they were spending a month just to keep stuff up and running for Icarus, and I was blown away. And really quickly, the other thing was like he tied things to content creators about, you put so much time and effort into a video or something, and it might work and it might not. But I just thought about in my head about how much higher the stakes are for game dev, because you have so much more time, you have so many more people working on it, and you have all this buildup, and you launch a game. If you launch a video and it sucks, like you make another one next week. But if a game sucks, like what they had to do with Icarus and just go back to the drawing board and start grinding again, it's just it's wild, man. It takes an animal to do that.
On top of it, like I think this, when he talks about like the emotional toll that it takes and the chunks that it takes, it's because you're shouldering so much more. Like there's people's lives on your back. So every decision you make is fucking crucial. And he kind of alluded a couple of times there about the margins and how cutthroat the industry actually is, and how it's even getting worse. No, it was a great interview. It was man, we touched on a whole bunch of different shit there. Just thinking back, like we went from military, we're talking Kitten Space Agency. We went into actual like frameworks of engines. Like it's a great show.
Yeah, it was cool. So we hope you guys got something out of the show. Our kind of idea and the thing we're shooting for is to educate you all. I always wanted to do that because I feel like, especially in social media, there's a gap in communication and knowledge between devs and gamers.
Yeah.
And we try to bridge that gap with some knowledge a little bit. So that's what this episode was for. If you guys did appreciate that, what helps us out, there's a lot of free things you can do to help out the show, leaving those 5-star reviews on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you guys are, as well as liking and sharing this YouTube video. Anybody you think that might be interested in it as well. Podcasts grow from word of mouth. So that's really all we ask. It's a free way to do that. If you want to get these shows earlier though, patreon.com/BigFry. You can get the shows a few days early. Those are always commercial free, and you guys can get a head sneak peek at that. Also, when we do our regular shows, you guys can be a part of the show, ask questions, and we'll bring those on and discuss them. Lots of perks over there on the Patreon. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys got something out of it, and I can't wait to do the next one.
Absolutely. See you guys.